DaVo here from the Axiom Body Piercing Studio in Des Moines, Iowa, and coming up right now, pros and cons of earlobe piercings from a piercer. That's me. So stick around. Okay, for those of you that are new to the channel, if you don't know who I am, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional piercer and have been since 1994. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio here in Des Moines, Iowa, and we share a space with Skin Kitchen Tattoo. The goal of this particular video is to give you some advantages and disadvantages of getting earlobe piercings and some of the things that you should consider before getting them done. It's kind of to give you kind of a basic understanding of what it involves so that when you go and talk to your piercer, you have kind of approach it from an educated standpoint. First off, we'll start out with the pros, the advantages. Ear piercings, earlobe piercings are extremely widely socially accepted. It is one of those piercings you can have and people are not going to be that concerned about it. So you may be able to possibly get away working in professional environments more so than you would if you had like a nostril piercing or a septum piercing or a bunch of other facial piercings. The piercing has been around for a long time, so it has a tradition, especially on females. Men, maybe not so much so, but in the last 20 years or so, it's become pretty commonplace. Number two, looks good with a large variety of different types of jewelry styles. Now with ear piercings, even if you have them professionally done by a piercer like myself, you could go ahead and wear a lot of the mass-produced jewelry that's on the market. You don't have to stretch up to large, thick gauges. But you have that option. There's a lot of variety for earlobe piercings, from just stud jewelry, rings, hangers, all kinds of different stuff. Short healing period. Usually an earlobe will take anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks to heal. It's a fairly easy heal too, so it's not known for problems. Usually if you take care of it properly, you're going to see little or no issues. This piercing, by far, is the easiest piercing to stretch. For those that are not familiar with what stretching is where you increase the thickness of the jewelry over a short period of time and increase the thickness of the jewelry. It's why when you see those kids running around with those huge plugs and so forth, that's how that's done. The lobe is probably the easiest piercing to stretch out just because the tissue is very flexible and it tends to lend itself well or easily to stretching, opposed to other piercings like, for example, an upper ear cartilage, where you're dealing with cartilage, thick cartilage, where it's not going to stretch very easily, and it's going to take an extremely long time to stretch it if you can actually stretch it. Number 5, the final of the pros, has a long history of healing easily and healing with little or no issue. This is a piercing that millions upon millions upon millions of people have. They've had no issues with it, healed it out easily, and never really had any major problems. So it's not experimental, it's not cutting edge, it's something that's easy to heal and is probably going to produce very good results. The other thing with it is usually just about everybody on the planet has the correct anatomy to get this done. It's a very, very small percentage of people that I would say, you probably don't want to get that piercing. In fact, I don't think I've ever refused anybody for anatomy problems. Other piercers, you ever done that? I don't know. Now let's get on to the cons. Disadvantages, things that not so good. The area comes in contact, number one, the area comes in contact with a lot of different devices, bedding, your pillow, hair products, etc. That is like probably one of the number one causes of problems that people see in ear piercings. And I'll get into some of the ways that I always end this out with kind of doing an aftercare extra explanation or overview. But that is something you do need to consider. You can't wear headphones, earmuffs, anything that's going to be coming in contact with it. You do not want to use telephones, and you do not want to sleep on the piercings. You pretty much have to sleep like a mummy. That was more Frankenstein, wasn't it? Anyway, number 2. Piercing can close. There's a misconception that a lot of people on this planet have that once your ear's pierced, it's permanently pierced. That is not the case. If you remove the jewelry for any extended period of time, your body will begin to try to reconstruct that tissue in the center and start closing the piercing. I know people say, oh, I took it out for 10 years and I don't have problems putting it back in. Is it sore when you put it back in? Does it bleed when you put it back in? Is it grumpy? Does it discharge? You're re-piercing it every time you do that. So it is like all other piercings, something that you do need to leave jewelry in. That said, maybe on the pro side of it, it does tend to stay open longer than other piercings do. But whenever in doubt, leave something in your piercings. That means you. And now you know. Tissue is a thinner tissue, and they can tear easily if you wear overly heavy jewelry, especially if it's thin jewelry. We all know somebody out there that wears those or wore those huge giant hoops that seem to go in style and out of style about every 2 or 3 years. And now their ear is a giant slit. It's no longer a round hole, it's a slit. That's from tearing. They can also tear if they get caught or snagged on things, especially if you're wearing jewelry that's of a thinner gauge, like most commercial jewelry, which is anywhere from 22 to maybe 16 if you're lucky, if you're buying really high quality stuff. But most of it outside the body piercing industry is like 20, 22 gauge, 24 gauge. It's very thin. If it gets caught on something, it can tear pretty easily. So keep that in mind. That brings us to the next thing, because we're talking about jewelry. Because there is a huge market for ear piercing jewelry, there are a lot of products on the market made of substandard and dangerous materials. A lot of it is plated. If you're going to go into a commercial retail area and buy this mass-produced stuff, and you don't have an allergic reaction initially, you may develop one. Often they'll have plating on top that is somewhat acceptable to most people, but the undercoating is usually a material that is unknown, can contain a lot of materials that people have allergic reactions to or can develop allergies to. So that is something you do need to consider. You kind of need to stick with jewelry that is of a better quality. I know a lot of people like to run out and buy a bunch of variety of different stuff, and usually it's on a cardboard thing and there's 15 different studs, and that stuff is going to cause problems. So because there's such a market for it, there is much more jewelry out there, and cheap jewelry and terrible jewelry, than there is with any other type of piercing that you can possibly get, because there's a big demand for it, because it's done so often. Number 5, aftercare. This is what I would generally tell somebody if they came in for a piercing, requested this particular piercing. This is my consultation of what I would tell them. And that is that your average healing time is going to be 8 to 12 weeks, during which you're going to be cleaning it twice a day in the shower using a mild antimicrobial or germicidal soap such as satin or Proven. Also doing hot soaks preferably, or compresses if soaks are too much of a hassle, for roughly about 10 minutes twice daily with warm water and sea salt. Cross-contamination prevention, common sense things. Washing your hands before you handle it, no oral contact around the piercing until it heals, keeping your environment, your clothing, bedding, towels, anything that may come in contact with it clean. Also keeping pets away from it, not letting them sleep in the bed with you. They're just germ magnets. They're just going to draw everything they've come in contact with and put it on your clean linen. Not submerging in any body of water other than your own clean and well-maintained bathtub, where you can control how clean the water is, which means absolutely no swimming at all until it's completely healed. Couple other things, you do not want to sleep on the piercings. Make sure that you're sleeping on your side or your back, or not on your back side, actually either on your stomach or on your back. If you got both of them done, if you absolutely have to sleep on the piercing, you do need to kind of build a nest for it. Generally what I'll suggest doing is taking a big fluffy clean bathtub towel, rolling it up, putting it in the shape of a donut, and then sleeping with your ear in the center of it so that it's elevated off the bed. I've had clients use hemorrhoid pillows, the giant blow-up donuts, and those U-shaped travel pillows. The other thing you need to consider is that you want to avoid contact with telephones. I think I already mentioned that, but we'll mention it again just because it's important. Especially your own smartphone, you don't really want to know what's on the cover of that glass, or you never put it close to your mouth again. Headphones, especially over-the-head headphones, or anything that's constrictive on the ear, you want to be conscious of any hair products you're using, that you shield it with folded up paper towel and don't get it on there. Back to the subject of people thinking that ear piercings are just permanently open. If you're involved with any type of sporting activity or competitive hobby or anything that may require you to remove the jewelry during some period of time, even if it's only 90 minutes, I don't advise it. Maybe after a year or two it might be okay, but in that initial year period, I wouldn't suggest leaving the jewelry out for any extended period of time. The reason being is that the piercing can't close pretty rapidly. The other problem is where you're storing the jewelry, and the possibility of when you do put it back in, you basically are ripping the piercing back open, and then whatever's on that ring or piece of jewelry or stud or whatever is then going into an open wound and causing an infection in a piercing that was pretty much healed. So that's all I have to say on that. If you have any questions, maybe you don't feel like I covered something, or maybe I brought up a subject and you're just not sure what I'm talking about, please leave a comment. I love to answer questions. I love to interact with people. If you have something to add to this, please do so in the comments section. I'd love to read new information. If you've got something I don't know, I'd love to learn. I hope you do too. That's probably why you're watching this. You love to learn. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. If you like to see more of these videos, I do the pros and cons in body piercing basics, and we also do a weekly update that includes the guys from the Skid Kitchen and Q&A, which also involves Jack and Wes from Skid Kitchen, where we answer questions about body modification at length. Please subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything. Other than that, I hope that you feel more educated, you've learned something, and you can now make an educated decision about whether or not you want to get earlobe piercings. And if you're in the Des Moines area, I hope to see you for your piercing needs in the future.